Hi there, I'm Jenn Cassetta, your Chief Badassery Officer. If you're feeling drained, hesitant, stuck in self-doubt, or you just have a case of the vlogs, the Art of Badassery podcast is here to help you unleash your mojo once and for all. We'll provide you with tips, techniques, and real-life examples of how you can kick ass in all areas of your life. You'll learn how to flex your mental muscles, rise above fears, and turn setbacks into superpowers. So let's enter the dojo and let's get to work.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Art of Badassery podcast. I'm Jenn Cassetta, your Chief Badassery Officer, and I can't be more excited for today's guest that you're all about to meet, who I met while I was teaching a workshop a few years ago. I want to say it's at least 5 or more years ago in upstate New York. Where was that again? Poughkeepsie?
In Newburgh. Yep.
Newburgh. Anyway, let me get to it. It is the famous Deborah Hanlon. And if you haven't heard of Deborah yet, Deborah is a transformational guide, medium, and author of the book In the Presence of Proof that I can't wait to hear about. For over 2 decades, Deborah has empowered people to harness the transformative power of grief, helping them to heal, grow, and step into their highest potential. With a unique blend of science, spirituality, and intuition, Deborah leads her clients on a journey of self-awareness, tapping into their inner strength to unlock the lives they are destined to live. Her teachings, grounded in both psychology and metaphysics, offer a refreshing realism that honors skepticism and celebrates the mystery of the human spirit. Deborah, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. I can't believe it.
I can't believe it. Deborah started showing up in my feed recently, which I think sometimes is a clear sign that I was supposed to be in touch with her. And sure enough, the message that you put out on social media is exactly the stuff that I've been learning with Dr. Joe Dispenza recently. And then, of course, I go to read in Deborah's bio that a lot of her work has been inspired by Dr. Joe. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. He's one of the most brilliant minds of our time, for sure.
Wow. That says a lot coming from you. But who are some of the other teachers that you mentioned as well?
Oh gosh, there's so many. As far as names that people would know would be the Deepak Chopra's. I do love his science and spirituality. I'm really into someone named Donald Hoffman right now. He's a mathematician scientist who talks about consciousness and reality and putting it in some pretty intense, like, wow, interesting endeavors. There's so many. Pema Chodron and my goodness, James Van Praagh. I mean, from all different modalities.
You mentioned Bruce Lipton as well, I think.
Oh yeah, my husband and I just saw Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, Anita Moorjani. I mean, there's so many phenomenal human beings on this planet talking about like really big, cool things.
I love this so much because this is where I just feel like I've been going towards this type of work over the last decade. It went from, motivation and mindset and goal setting and all of that stuff, which I think is really still important. I just became a high performance coach, so I help people do that. But I think mixing that with this type of metaphysical world, if you will, is so, so exciting. What would you say? Well, first of all, Deborah, I mean, there's so much, I have so many questions for you, but what would you say, just because I feel like I've brought up Dr. Joe so much on this podcast already, because I went to his retreat in person over the summer, what would you say is, how can you wrap up his learning to you? What does it mean to you? What's your biggest takeaway from him?
Yeah, it's a great question. He is somebody who had to learn his teachings / truth / science through personal experience. So he merges an actual traumatic event and how he climbed out of that event, and then also provided the science to help others do the same. So he walks his talk.
Yes. And I think that is so important. Such a great point to make, because so many of us have a defining moment in our lives where things change, or we go deeper into discovering why we're here or what we're meant to be doing or all of that. And I believe your story on your journey to becoming a medium and a transformational coach begins with a moment like that as well. Do you want to go way back and share that with us?
Yeah, way back in time. So yeah, the beginnings of my awareness and intrigue to whether, what happens when we die and why are we here? Those are the two big questions that I've literally questioned since I'm 3 years old. So when I was three,
Wow.
I had a 4-year-old brother who died of a very rare childhood cancer. And thankfully, at that time, this was 1979, my parents were pretty progressive in his care and his treatment and who surrounded him and the family. And they highly believed in science and medical intervention for sure. And also we were surrounded by all sorts of different healers. So like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the founder of the entire hospice movement, spent time at our house in our home. And I don't have conscious memories of that, but I do feel like, I was steeped in this consciousness of just this awareness about life and death. So when he died, I very much knew that he passed and he was not physically here. So that wasn't the problem. But I also felt that he was still here. And yet I knew he wasn't, and I knew he was. And so my entire life, in my early life, I was trying to find within myself what's going on. Is he here? Is he not here? Am I using my imagination? Am I using that imagination thinking and hoping he's around just to solve the grief of my family? And so all these questions and these experiences led me to really dive deep young. I was reading about Einstein and his theories at 10.
Oh my gosh.
Young. Looking back, I thought it was normal. I thought it was totally normal.
Wow. Can I ask though, when you were young, especially around the time it happened, did you experience any, quote unquote, paranormal activity? Did he show himself to you?
No. So that's a great question. It's not that it was an inner knowing. And it's really important for people to know that, because leading up to what I do today with mediumship and connecting with people of past, everything that is out there that I personally have seen so far is so far from the basic reality of the afterlife. And I think that's getting in society's way of experiencing the afterlife, because we watch movies that really aren't portraying it properly. We're watching TV shows that are not portraying it properly. And what I mean by that is this is an ability to connect with consciousness, whether it's in a physical form or otherwise. That is an ability every human being on the planet has. Wow. And it's not portrayed that way. It's portrayed as mediums are certain people that, for some reason they have this ability. I don't think all people on the planet should be mediums for others. I think that's where a skill comes in. But as far as connecting to consciousness, we all have that ability. And so it's a very internal experience. So no, I didn't have like outward paranormal experiences. I mean, I've had things for sure. Early on, not that I can remember completely, but that's not the birthplace of all of this, which is connecting to energy. Yeah. Versus a paranormal, we see it as hauntings. We see it as, I saw someone appear before my eyes, which I have seen that before, but that's not the only way it happens.
Okay. So keep going on your journey. You're reading Einstein at 10, and then what?
I know. I always thought that was super normal. I really did. Until hindsight, I'm like, wow, totally not typical. And I was doing all the 10-year-old things as well, of course. But I really went into studying psychology and world religions and language and anthropology and like the origin of humans. I was really always interested in all of that. And I was really more of a skeptic to the afterlife because I was kind of trying to prove to myself that I was making it up. And what was it? Just this sense. It wasn't even like I had like a specific paranormal experience. It was more of an inner, deep, clear knowing.
Wow.
And it was that knowing was more real than anything in my outward life, in my 10, 15, 20-year-old life. And so that was what was thrusting me to like figure out, am I making this up?
Right.
And if I am, great, then I'll know I'm making it up and I can move on. And then life happened. Fast forward a few years, I was at a funeral, always interested in psychics and interested in mediumship. I went to a few and would say like, this is dumb. This is dumb. Because if our loved ones are really around, why don't they, I would always say like, lift this pen and levitate it out of my hand so I know that they're there. And mediums would laugh at me and I would say, this is ridiculous. Why don't they give more concrete proof? Because as humans, we want proof. So I was in search of proof, and getting bits and pieces, but not enough. Then I was at a funeral, and I was at a funeral for a person I didn't know well.
How old were you at this point?
I was 25.
Okay.
25 years old at this funeral. And I had just had a baby, maybe 3 months, 4 months before. And I'm at this funeral, or even before the funeral, I found out when she passed, I had a flash and I experienced her life review with her. It's the best way I can explain it. I knew exactly what this woman was feeling, seeing, experiencing, everything during her passing. I didn't even know she had passed yet. And then fast forward, I'm at the funeral and I just feel her with me, which doesn't make sense because again, she's not somebody I knew well. It's not like I would make her up, and at the funeral, I'm introduced to people and they would say, this is Sean. And I would know, hey, that's Sean, her cousin or whatever the name is. So there was a series of events that happened that were bringing me proof of like, okay, either I have some sort of postpartum psychosis, which I was like, maybe that's what it is, or she's really trying to let me know so that I share that with her family, that she's all right, she's here. And ultimately, that's what, I started bringing her through to her family.
Wow. And were they shocked? Did they receive it well?
Some did. There was a moment where we're sitting in a room, and this is the moment that I went, okay, I'm listening to you. I promise I will not shut down on you. I will listen. And I was sitting in a chair, and right over here, there was a photo of her behind me with her and all of her children and grandchildren at that point. And she kept telling me, turn around, look at the picture. And she would say, I know about my face. And she gave me this feeling like something was touching her face. So I was like feeling a little nuts. Like looking at the picture, there's no smudge on the face. It kept coming over and over. Look at my face. I know every night I know about my face every night. Doesn't make any sense to me, but it's bothering me. All of a sudden, her son walks into the room and says to everyone, points to that picture and says, I kiss her face in that picture every night. Aww. And that was the moment where I went, okay, she's trying to let me know, to let him know that she knows.
Right.
That was the moment that I was like, I will remain open and I promise to listen.
Wow. So many questions are going through my head. First of all, I just have to point out that today, the day that we're filming this episode, which is not the day that it'll be released, but is the Day of the Dead, right?
It sure is.
It sure is. So you have this gift to be able to communicate with people that are somewhere in the afterlife. When people are in that grieving state, what are some things that you can share with us about grief, either your own grief journey or, even up until you got to that part of your life, like, did you shift in your own grief journey?
Big time. Yeah. And grief is such an intriguing emotion, which I refer to all emotions as just energy, right? It's an energy that moves through us. And it's a powerful one, if not the most powerful. What I've come to learn now is that grief is the most potent transformational energy that can run through someone's body. And we're not taught that because grief is something we all want to avoid. No one in their right mind says, gosh, I hope that something really terrible happens so that I can transform. Right. No one in their right mind. I would still not say that. I know I know that it does, but I wouldn't ask for it.
Yeah.
But the intensity of grief really opens up a real big potential for transformation, because when we're deep into grieving, whether that's from a loss of a loved one through death, or a loss of a sense of identity from losing a job or a relationship, or all sorts of ways we can define loss, when we have that, it shakes us up and forces us to ask questions. It forces us to get really, unfortunately, real with ourselves, and to really see and ask, where am I suffering? And where do I no longer want to tolerate suffering because I have this other suffering going on? So it really does create such a transformational force. It's just a time.
I love how you just said that. So it's almost like I need to prioritize what's terrible in my life.
Yes.
And I only have, space for this terrible thing that I just lost. And you know what? All that other stuff I need to maybe set some boundaries around or not allow in my life anymore. That's a really cool side effect or benefit of going through the grieving process.
It is. And I think it really needs to be highlighted so we can normalize it, and we can really, put our attention there as well. Because a lot of times when, we have friends and family that fall away in a grief time, right? But that's okay. That means that it's time for that to sort of fall away. So we open up ourselves to something new and more. So maybe, it would maybe lessen some guilt that comes for the grieving of, or anger for when people aren't as supportive because they can't be, or whatever the reasons are. It opens the doorway for allowing things to be okay and still setting those boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Every time grief comes up, I think about my dad, and I've talked about him a lot on this podcast, who passed away very suddenly and very unexpectedly. So grieving him, it felt like, I remember one of my dear friends said to me, she said the wake felt like it was you were watching someone who died in a car crash or something, because it was a shock to so many people because he was such a healthy man. So few things to say about grief. One, I don't feel like this society, we give ourselves enough time to grieve. It's like, okay, 1 week or whatever. My sister was home for like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, and then had to get back to work. I stayed a little longer, but I was still like having to think of my business and how am I going to pay my bills and all that. Like, we don't give ourselves the space. And also over time, I do feel like the grieving process really changes. And the part that I'm at now with my grieving process through my work with Joe Dispenza, I see it in a whole new way. And I think I'm finally understanding what you're talking about, which is, oh God, I don't even know how to say it yet, but that it's not as sad as I needed. It's not as sad, right? Like, I can connect to my dad or his spirit or whatever we want to call it at any point of the day if I really wanted to, even though he doesn't show up for me, even though he doesn't necessarily speak to me through things or move objects. Like, I
very rarely do.
Yeah. Okay, good to know. Well, because sometimes you hear stories from other people like, oh, I had this dream and it was so clear and da, da, da. And then you feel bad because you're like, I never get that. I don't get those signs. Is there like, he's so distant from me now. I'll never have that. So I need to stop.
We could do a whole show on that alone,
right?
Because that is a huge pet peeve for me, for people, because there's no stock way that we're able to connect and they're able to connect with us. We just have to learn our own personal language with them, which is not a universal language. It's very personal, very individual.
Now, okay, saying that is really individual, and I'm assuming you walk clients through that process. Do you individualize it, or do you have like a framework? And I don't expect you to share the whole framework, but is there something you can teach us now that like how we can do that?
Well, just first know that, where so many people do say, oh my gosh, when my so-and-so passed away, they came to me immediately. I knew they were at the service. And that's amazing and wonderful and true and real, but it's not everyone's experience. Same with, I see on Facebook all the time, cardinals are from your loved ones, or butterflies or dragonflies or ladybugs or all the things, dimes, nickels, pennies. And those are real signs for some people. Not one of them are any of my signs for my loved ones. So there are no universal signs until you create a relationship with consciousness, which is which is what the grieving process is. We are learning how to go from grieving a physical relationship and moving through a process to understand that there's an energetic, infinite relationship. Laws of physics talks about quantum entanglement, and once two people meet or once two particles meet, we're forever entangled. So, that's the process of grieving, from physical to quantum, from physical to energetic, to spirit, whatever you want to call it.
Wow. That right there can change people's lives, right?
Yeah, it just gave me chills on that.
Yeah, well, it's that big. It is that big because people, I mean, and like you said, through movies and all this, or even through other examples of people, we watch, like the old widows, and they wear black and they're unhappy and they never, go on to live their lives again, and that's extreme, but there's a lot of examples of that where people will never want to date again if they lose their partner, or never want to get into a relationship again, and all that stuff. But tell us more, like okay, so we have to know that it's possible. And what I love so much about what you said, it's a transformation, right? So we're just transforming our relationship from physical to energetic. Then what?
Yeah. Well, that requires us to realize that we are physical beings, but we're also energetic beings or spiritual beings, whatever you want to call it. So we have to then start looking at ourselves as physical and energetic. And once we start looking at ourselves as both, then that opens up a whole other world of possibilities. It makes it very clear that death is not a final end, which is where humans think death means over.
Right.
We think done. And death is really just a transformation. Death means change, change of form. So, we need to start looking at our language. We need to start looking at our beliefs around all of it. We need to look at ourselves differently, that we're not just humans that are running around a rat race on a planet to pay bills. Like, we are so much more, we're so trapped in that, so trapped. And we're all trapped in it. We are all in it. I'm in it too. Like, I'm doing it too because I'm human. I'm in the human piece. And I also know, like I always say, like, zoom out, Deb, zoom out, because this isn't the end of the world, whatever's happening in my human life. I can't afford a new table, or I can't, do this, or I can't pay for my kids' college education completely. All the things that we're all worried about and beyond. Yeah. Like, okay, I'm going to get through that too. So it's understanding, in my book, I call it our human self and our higher self. So we are human, and we're not going to get past that point. And I don't suggest that we try, although we need to expand that we're not just the human limited selves, that we are really conscious creators of our own lives.
Ooh, which just led me into that's the perfect segue, because when you were talking about, okay, so here I am in this human body, this human experience, and I'm not necessarily seeing the results of the things that I want to, I'm going to use the word manifest, I'm working towards all these things. I'm doing the work, whatever that looks like to you, but meaning I'm doing some spiritual work, I'm doing some personal development work, and I'm doing the work of the physical work that needs to happen to reach my goals, but I'm not seeing the results yet.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been in this place for a long time in my personal life, in my career life, and yet getting closer to my energetic self and learning more about this stuff, I'm like, okay, I just need to have more faith. What can you say to people like like me, or like you said, not being able to afford the table or sending your kids to college. How does your work also translate to manifesting more of what you want in life?
Yeah, such a great question, because we all want to know that, right? Our human selves are limited, so that it's our human selves that get stuck on outcome, on the way things should be, the way we think and perceive it should happen, how we think it happens for someone else, and why isn't that happening for us? All the comparison stuff that we all do. And if people say, I never do that.
Trapped, as you said.
Exactly. So that piece, and this is why my work is hard to define. Like when people say, what do you do? I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to wrap my head around explaining it, because the deceased led me to really work on the living. The deceased led me to really help the living, really, bust out of our own traps, if you will, and our own limited thinking. And so that stuff comes down to, or one doorway to really work is look at your core beliefs. When I don't think it requires as much faith as it does awareness. Awareness of, and because faith is a hard thing for me. I have a hard time with believing something that I can't prove. And that's just the way I'm wired. So, I always say, I can't believe that our loved ones are with us. Like, I can't believe that on faith. I needed proof of that. And so that's what I sought out. I'm not saying that's the right way to be, but I'm just saying that's how I am wired. So faith or belief. But for me to find faith, I have to look at, like, what is running my show in my head? Where's my brain going? Because we have unconscious conditioning that gets in our way. It makes or breaks us. Completely. And the conditioning that's good, we keep it. You're right. We don't touch it. The conditioning that's not great, we need to tweak it, and we tweak it over time. So with that, I would say to, like, go back to the core beliefs and see what's showing up, and then challenge those core beliefs. This is how it was in the past, but I'm kind of done with that story, because we're just great, wonderful storytellers. And when we tell stories, meaning, well, I can't do that because, or this happens that way because, we just keep ourselves in a conscious loop of the past, which is what Joe always talks about. And in order to create new, we must come from a clear, sort of almost neutral, in my mind, I consider it a neutral space of creation moving forward.
And I love that word create, because that's how I feel like I'm answering my own question of any time where I feel stuck, or the results aren't showing up fast enough, or I'm not, getting what I want. I know that sounds so childish, but I just start creating, and I get back into creation mode, because I just feel that, and I don't know if this is right or whatever, but for me, it just means that I'm lobbing balls up to the universe. I got that from Mike Dooley.
He's another great.
Yeah, Unlimited Possibilities, where he's like, just hit those tennis balls, just keep lobbing those balls up. And eventually you're going to get one, served back to you. So sometimes it could feel like I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall, but really it's just forward movement. So if anyone out there is feeling stuck in grief, in results not showing up fast enough, whatever, wherever you're feeling stuck or trapped, I like that word because you can really feel it.
Yep.
I don't know. My advice is just to get into motion, start creating something. And creation could be anything. It could be writing. It could be journaling. It could be doing a social media video. It could be creating anything. It doesn't even have to be towards the thing that you want, but just get into creation mode. What would you say around that?
Totally. Creation mode, stillness. Stillness is one of the highest creation modes, which our generation, right? We were not taught stillness. We were taught hustle, grind, go, go, go,
right.
work. And that is a great attribute until it's not, until we keep resorting to that, expecting a different result. So again, it comes back to challenging, like, where is this creation work coming from? I feel like if I work hard, then I'll be rewarded, or whatever the word is. Or are we just recreating our conditioning, which I know I fall into that trap all the time.
100%.
More. Yeah.
I mean, so when you said it, I was like, yep, hustle mode. I've actually worked, I worked with my NLP coach a long time ago on that word, because I kept using it, you know, during our coaching sessions. And he asked me, how do you feel when you use that word hustle? And I got still and I felt in my body and I said, it doesn't feel good. It feels like a hamster on a wheel. And he was like, okay, so let's think of a new word to use instead. So we came up with generate. And
Perfect.
yeah, and also I spelt it with Jenn.
Oh, how cute. I love
Generate.
that.
Yes. So, and when I say it, it feels lighter, it feels fun, it feels forward motion, but not in a way that feels like grinding, like I have to grind through something. So yeah, I think that's a good distinction, especially for me, and I hope anyone out there that's listening that can resonate. You know, hustle feels like a grind, but maybe we can create and be in more flow, even in the stillness. That sounds much
Exactly.
better.
Yes, 100%, which is exactly what I mean. Like it's an individual endeavor because hustle might be a word for someone else that really gets them going.
True.
So everyone's different. So we have to really take it back to ourselves and go, is that feeling right for me? If it's a no, then it's no. The end of story. It could be great for everyone else on the planet, but not you. And then we say, that doesn't work for me. So our language, which goes back to vibration, which vibration is energy, so like, we have to be really aware of how is our own language contributing to our outcome. So that's why the deceased with the energy brings me into the living, because it's like, oh, this requires a lot of self-introspection, being really truthful and honest with myself about myself, and then taking some sort of action. But stillness is an action as well.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, getting into meditation is an action that's getting you into stillness.
Exactly.
And the buzzwords for me are frequency and vibration, frequency and vibration. I could talk about it all day long.
Absolutely.
For people that don't really get that concept, I'm like started to, just in the last 6 months, I would say, to a year, started sprinkling it into my keynotes because I'm like, this is what I'm into. This is what's resonating with me. Let me throw it out there and see what happens. And sure enough, the last few big keynotes that I've done, people come up to me and they're just, usually a handful, and they're like, man, when you talk about vibration and frequency, it's like, I get it. I get what you're saying. And you can just tell that there's certain people that are learning this stuff. And maybe it's through social media, maybe it's through books or a lot of the speakers that you mentioned in the beginning. But what would be like the 101 of frequency and vibration that you can share with us?
Well, I teach a intense workshop called
Ooh.
Energy Transformation Awareness. We call it
Great.
ETA, which is also, estimated time of arrival on yourself. And it's a very deep emotional process where we start to recognize and unravel our conditioning, and unraveling, in that we get to see our vibration of the past and how our vibration in the current state is probably more closely, if we feel stuck, it's probably more resonating to our childhood consciousness and vibration. And so how do we break out of that? So there's a series of, I'm doing a workshop in November around this, using yoga principles to how do we move the energy in our body. So first we need to know how to experience the energy. We need to, like you said, your practitioner said, how does hustle feel in your body? So that would be the first step. Ask, how does it feel to talk about whatever you're talking about in your body? And really become aware. Oh, I get a headache, or, oh, it's really exciting, or I get a forward feeling, or I get a feeling. We really identify, how is this manifesting in your body?
Right.
Because however it's manifested and experienced in the body, that's how it's going to show up outside. So if it doesn't feel good in the body, we definitely want to go, oops, hold on. Let me find some better language around that. Let me find some better stories around that. Let me weave a new tale for myself, AKA affirmations, which I don't believe in saying affirmations just willy-nilly.
Right.
I think we need to really go through a deep process of creating affirmations that cause resonance in the body. So it's really paying attention to, like, where am I at? How does this feel? Does this feel right for me? It could be right for 8 billion people on the planet and not be right for you, which means it's not right for you.
Wow. Oh my gosh. All of this is So much to think about. And
Endless.
yes, when I think of Dr. Joe's work and what really resonated was picturing that every thought, every word has a vibration, and a vibration makes a wave, and the wave has a frequency, right? So
Yep.
every word that we're saying, every thought that we're thinking, then will cause a feeling, and that feeling is going to just spread out into your universe.
Yep.
So we have so much more power, so much power to transform ourselves, our lives, and even have an impact on the world than we even can imagine.
Yeah.
I think it's about making the choice that, like, do I want to be active? Do I want to be proactive in the creation of my future or not? And
And I
most
think,
people,
I think what gets in the way for people is that they don't want to see what's not working for them. Everybody wants to jump into the outcome. But what that does is if we try to jump into the outcome, we're not taking care of, like, we're not doing the cleanup of the past vibration. So we got to get really honest with ourselves of, like, ooh, I have a very limited belief system around this. Or, ooh, I have a very competitive nature. So, ooh, how do I smooth that out for myself? Or how do I make that work for me in a way that feels good? You know, so we have to get really honest. And I think a lot of people want to skip that part because that part is sticky. It doesn't feel good. It's emotional too. And when we want to transform, what do we want to do? We want to skip the negative emotions.
Of course.
I use the negative emotions. I think all negative emotions, I visualize them as if they're coal. So I don't know if you've ever, like, held a piece of coal, but coal, when you touch a piece of coal, it gets black soot everywhere. Like, you can't be around it without it starting to, like, stick to you. So negative emotions and I really prefer to call them unfavorable emotions, because negative makes us think they're bad emotions, and they're not bad. They just are not the ones we want. So when these unfavorable emotions are like coal, they get dirt on everything. They make everything seem so sticky. But under the right circumstances, AKA say a fire, if we put coal in a fire, that will make a steam train go. So I use the visual of, like, if I use my negative emotions or my unfavorable emotions in a good condition, under the right conditions, I can then power transformation. So, you know, we all talk about, like, you've got to think positively, and I'm 1,000% that, but we can't genuinely think positively if we have unconscious residual negative core beliefs. It makes it so much harder. So we've got to look in the past to catapult us into the future.
Oh, I love that. Deborah, will you share just the different ways that you work with clients?
Oh gosh, I mean, I mediumship sessions, right? So that's the original. Usually most people come to me for connecting to a loved one. And then that over time, hopefully I help allow people to know, like, yeah, your loved one's there. They have not missed a beat. They're doing fine. I always say they've got the good spot, right? They're way luckier than we are. They're not in this realm anymore. And then as we work on that and the grief changes, then people start showing up for more coaching, intuitive coaching in life. And, like, how do we do this? Or, you know, now that I'm kind of restabilized from my loss, now I'd like to focus on my finances, or focus on my career, or my kids, or my spouse, or a relationship, whatever it is. So it moves. My work with people moves according to their needs.
Amazing. And I also saw on your website you're leading retreats. What kind of retreats? What can people learn at your retreats?
Oh, the retreats. I have two to Costa Rica that I've been to, a specific place called Mystica in Costa Rica, where the owners and the practitioners there are truly the closest things to angels on earth that I've ever met. I mean, they are so present and truly in service to humans on a deep spiritual level. Wow. And then I'm leading a retreat to France next October.
Where in France?
It's in a teeny town. Oh my gosh, and I'm forgetting it, but it's the southern part of France, Toulouse. It's near Toulouse, but it's remote. And I'm not sure what the theme of that one will be. Probably some sort of deep introspection. I'm thinking moving into stillness. So those are ways to work with me. And then I do a lot of online workshops. Meditation is a staple of what I teach. Daily meditation at 6 a.m. on Zoom.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
6 a.m. Eastern.
6 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, yep. I'm not going to do that at 3 a.m. Sorry.
Oh, no. All my West Coasters are like not happening unless they're up all night, they tell me. And then weekly meditation at 8 p.m. on Sunday, which is a whole co-creation of energy where everybody's in attendance of the meditation, energetically contributes to the formation of the meditation. So it's a guided meditation. I've been doing that for 20 years. I've never repeated the same one twice because the makeup of the group is different every single week. So
wow. Oh, wow. I want to come to that. I need to get on your newsletter list. So how can people get on your list or find out more about your offerings?
Yeah, it's all on my website, deborahhanlon.com. So they can find it all there. They can email my office, which is hello@deborahhanlon.com.
Okay. I have like a million other questions, but I think I'm going to just have to invite you back for a round 2 if you would be willing in the new year. But before we go, I have 4 rapid fire questions that I love to ask all my guests. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm as ready as I think I'll be.
Okay, good. I just heard this bell and I think it was upstairs, but I was like, oh, that's perfect timing. Number 1, what was your favorite food when you were a child?
Oh gosh, pizza.
Sounds good. If you could have a drink, this is a perfect question for you. If you can have a drink with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and what would be your drink?
Hands down, Albert Einstein. And it would not matter. It would not matter what I could drink because I'd be drinking him in. So it could be water one day. It could be a Cabernet another day. It could be anything in between.
That's so cool. Great answer. What would be your favorite, I know this could be hard, but personal development book?
Oh, one that's coming to me is Broken Open by Elizabeth Lesser.
Okay, I need to look that up. And last but not least, what's your favorite hype song, the song that gets you going?
Oh, gosh. Oh, so many. Right now, I'm really into, I can't even believe I'm going to, Thank You, Kim by Taylor Swift. I mean, Thank You, Amy. Thank You, Amy. Oh my gosh, it's Thank you, Amy.
We won't tell Taylor. No worries. And I didn't know the difference. You could have told me that it was Kim and I would have believed you. Deborah, thank you so much for coming on, for talking about hard subjects like grief. Anyone out there, if you are grieving right now, or know someone that's grieving, please send this to them because I think what you shared with everyone can bring at least some sort of comfort, knowing that this is not it, folks. This is not the end, right? We have many other lifetimes to live, and many chances to reconnect with our loved ones. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to leave us with?
No, just that I hope this makes people even just maybe a little more curious. You know, curious is like, what is out there for me? What are we talking about? There's more for us. What do we mean? Like curiosity is another doorway to transformation. So maybe if you've gotten a little curious, you're on your way.
Amazing. Well, with that, everyone, thank you so much. Make sure you share, make sure you subscribe, rate, leave us a review, all the things, because they really help boost the badassery in general. And stay curious. See you next time.